Sam Jones, thanks for having us out today.
It's my pleasure, my friend.
Sam Jones was born into a multi-generational barbecue family that believed real barbecue was only ever cooked with all wood. His grandfather Pete Jones opened the now famous Skylight Inn in tiny Ayden, North Carolina in 1947. Initially lukewarm about following the family business, while in college researching barbecue's roots for a paper, combined with his grandfather's declining health, Sam came back into the business with a new respect and appreciation for what his family had created. In 2003, Skylight earned a James Beard Award for a new category called America's Classics, and Sam attended the ceremony, both he and his family completely unaware of the significance of the award. Since then, the notoriety has only grown, and Sam was soon considered a legendary pitmaster among the legends he was getting to meet and cook with around the country.
So this place has been open since...
This year will make 70 years. 47 was when my grandfather opened.
And so now let's see if I got it right. So you got 3 generations in this building, and then you've got a couple of generations prior that were...
Yeah, you can put your finger on a couple of them, and then the rest of it, I'm not sure if it's family lore or we just can't document it.
Right.
I hadn't been able to say this man did this for this period of time, and those dates and people are about as hazy as what blows out the top of that chimney on a daily basis.
Right.
But I know for a fact that at least 4 generations to 5 generations I can put my finger on that took place right here in this town.
And then the background before barbecue is farm?
Yeah, it was barbecue and farm up until the early 90s.
And were you guys raising pigs at that point? Some or mostly?
You know, my dad and my uncle could probably chime in on that better than I can because we're 70 years old here. I'm not quite that old, obviously. Some people might say I hadn't held up well, but I'm 36. And so I've heard my dad talking about when they raised hogs, but it wasn't so much for selling here.
Right.
Having hogs was something everybody had, because it was almost a fail-safe survival mode.
Sure.
Worst case scenario, you could live off of your land.
Yep.
My family, right on up to when I was a teenager, my grandfather had peacocks and chickens and guinea hen, and it seems like everything that walked or flew, he had it on this land around here, yeah.
Do you remember what kind of crops they were using, or was it just, were they rotating?
Grain and tobacco.
Oh yeah?
Tobacco was a cash crop, in especially eastern North Carolina, but
Sure.
North Carolina was a tobacco producing state. You know, back in those days, a family could live off of farming 25 to 40 acres of tobacco. Those days are long gone, but
Yeah.
Up until then, beans, corn, tobacco was what supplemented the income as well as the restaurant here.
Right. So you guys were farmer stock or whatever, and then your grandfather decided he would open up this place?
So my grandfather, if you want me to go back to square one, they were poor as newly released convicts. I mean, just broke as they could be. And when he was a young boy, his mother picked and raised flowers and would send him to Greenville, which in the 30s is like driving to Raleigh now.
Right.
I mean, you're talking about 10 miles, but he would literally hitchhike his way to town with these flowers to sell them. And a local funeral home typically would buy them just out of sheer pity.
Right.
And then he'd come home. But her 2 brothers ran these little cafes here in town. It was kind of a meet and 3 type of deal. Both of them cooked barbecue, a block from one another, which I've always thought was hilarious. So when he was like 7 or 8 years old, he started working or helping out one of his uncles. His brother worked with the other uncle. So weird. I still don't know the story behind why those 2 guys didn't have one restaurant
Together, right.
Right, but anyway, so he worked with him up until he was about 15 or 16 years old, and that was when he said he was going to build his own place. He opened here at 17 years old, which is another, I couldn't imagine a 17-year-old kid opening up anything, a hot dog stand for that matter. And it got to a point where the restaurant started to do pretty good, and so he told his brother that his brother ran the farm, he ran the restaurant. They were partners on the farm, and the restaurant was my grandfather's. And when it got to a point, and he said, we can't keep going like this.
Right.
Where one was expecting something different out of the other, and so they became partners on everything.
So now you've been operating this location as far as took over from your dad on the day-to-day, even though he's still coming in.
Well, my grandfather got sick in 2004. And once they got sick, he had some heart problems, and he was the mafia don of the Jones family. Nothing went on without his blessing. And so it went from that to he had some heart problems, went to the hospital on a Sunday. We were standing at his bedside in the emergency room, and they were getting ready to take him out to have his heart cath done. And he looked at my father, he was like, Samuel, anybody who loves me knows me as Samuel. That's what I always say. The Sam thing happened when I started traveling. But my mother gave me Samuel as my first name. He said, Samuel knows how I need this done, this done, this done, this done. So until I can get back, just let him take care of it. My dad was like, okay, whatever. And to some degree, because of how my granddaddy was, he handicapped us because he handled everything. And so, here we were, like a blind man playing darts. We don't know what we're doing to some extent. We're trying to do what's right. We did know how to make food. Now, I can't make crazy things. I can't make you a crazy salad with some kind of fancy vinaigrette on it. I can cook you a whole hog the way that my family's been cooking it for all these years.
Right.
And so we had that. And when he got sick, people would come in, man, let Mr. Pete know we're thinking about him, we're praying for him, all that. Well, in 2005, when oil prices shot up, well, that hurt. I don't know what it did for restaurants nationally, but I know what it did for this one.
Yeah, well, I owned one at that time, but I don't own it anymore. So.
Right, man, it beat us like a grass fire.
Yeah.
So in 2005, oil prices shot up. There was a sewer project going on here in Aden that closed the roads off. You just don't happen by here.
Right.
Like, this was the main road up until, I think, the 60s or 70s, but it hadn't been ever since.
Right.
And so you have to want to come here to come here. It's not one of those things where, man, what about that barbecue place we just passed?
Right.
Nobody's having that conversation in a car here.
Now, this is what you'd call a destination location.
That's right. And so I always back up and think that 05, 06, and 07 were some of the toughest years. I know 05 was one of the toughest years of my life for a variety of reasons. I had dated a young girl for probably about 6 years at that point in time. And so I'm trying to help run this restaurant. We didn't have a lot of help. Our profit wasn't very well, not because we weren't working hard, but just because it wasn't there.
Yeah, prices were shooting through the roof that year.
On everything.
Everything.
So
you couldn't catch a break no matter what
your
you were
prices
buying.
are going up, yet there's no more covers.
Yeah.
I mean,
They're actually, your covers are shrinking.
right, exactly. And but in August of that year, she and I were in a car wreck, threw us both out of the car, and it killed her.
Oh my God.
And she and I had been talking about getting married, and I mean, it was devastating to be. I was 24 years old at the time. To think about, at that age, you think you're gonna live to be 200 years old.
Yeah.
And even that is light years away. And for all that to be brought to sitting in a cemetery to watch a casket get lowered in the ground was just unbelievable. And so that car accident took place in August. A few months later, my grandmother passed. 2 months almost to the day that she died, my grandfather died.
Wow.
That was all within 6 months' time of people that I was with every day of my life. On top of the fact, business sucked. And so I remember there being 3 years there specifically of, we got to the end of the year and we had drawn our living salary out of here, and we just kind of looked at one another like, we'll see y'all next year. And all there was go back to work.
Yeah.
Fortunately, that was when that next year, 08, the Southern Foodways Alliance shot a documentary on us and wanted me to go up to the Big Apple Barbecue block party for the film screening of it. At that point in time, I didn't know anything about this outside food world. I was the one that went and accepted the James Beard Award, but we didn't even know what that was. Nor did anybody really care at the time, to be honest with you. That's what's so nuts about it.
That's awesome.
But we were just unaware. This was where we lived.
Yeah.
This was where we made our money. Outside of the people that bought our food, we didn't understand. I didn't understand anybody even cared outside of here. And so I go at Big Apple Barbecue, and I remember walking around that festival, and I looked at these guys like they were pure freaking rock stars. No different than you would if you went to CMA Fest. If you're a country fan and you go to CMA Fest and you walk around and everybody's set up, they've sing their tunes and they'll sign an autograph for you. That's the way I was at this Big Apple Festival. And I thought, God, like, how did you get here? Like, what transpires for you to be able to be here with all of this?
So who was there that year?
That first year, and bear in mind that I didn't know anyone outside the fact that they wanted me to go up to New York. And so I went and I walked around and didn't know anyone. The first people that reached out was an outfit, and I say an outfit, it was a guy that worked for Blackjack Barbecue out of Charleston, which is Jimmy Haygood. And I didn't know Jimmy in the morning. I knew you folks when I met you this morning. But there was a couple guys that worked with Jimmy that came to the tent where that film screening was, and they stood there and listened to what I had to say. And when I come off stage, they're like, dude, you have to come hang out with us. And I was like, sure, man. Wasn't like I had anything else to do.
Right.
So I go over to their rig, and on Jimmy's little rig he carries around, it's got a second deck to it, like a rooftop type deal. And when I went up there and sit down, I said, man, we're going to show you something you ain't going to believe. And sure enough, they opened the bag, and they had sent somebody by here on their way to New York to buy barbecue and sauce from here, from Skylight.
So they bought it from here to buy it up there? That's funny.
And I was thinking, as soon as I saw the bag, I was like, that's crazy. And I mean, we had been a destination for a while, but to be at something of that level and think that somebody
Those guys would know.
give a darn enough to come by here.
What part of New York do they hold that in? Do you remember?
Madison Square Park.
It is, okay.
So that was in June. September, I get a call from John T. Edge, wanting to know would I be willing to do an event in association with Charleston Food and Wine. And because it was John T. and I didn't know him that well at the time, I was like, yeah, I could probably do that. Bear in mind that I had never, ever been anywhere and cooked anything other than what little bit I had cooked right here. And so I agreed to it, honest to God, in my mind, thinking, yeah, I'm not going to do that. Like, this is, I'm going to tell you what you need to hear to get you off the phone type of deal.
I'm smiling because I've done that a bunch of times.
And then I'm going to go back to doing what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And so it seemed like a little later that year, or first of the following year, I got a call from somebody, an organizer with the festival, and I was like, ooh, I did agree to do that, didn't I? So I put it off, I mean, literally, it was like I was playing a shell game, but trying to get out of this thing. And Nick Pahakis, who is, he's real involved with the Southern Foodways Alliance. He's a partner with Jim and Nick's Barbecue. That was the restaurant, one of their restaurants on King Street was hosting this event. This was the second year of it. They had featured Rodney the first year, and it was kind of like it was kind of an honorary pitmaster dinner type of thing. And so he calls me on the phone, and I really didn't know him. And he said, what's the problem? Like, why don't you want to come down here? And he and I now we basically have cut our hand and took the La Cosa Nostra together. I mean, we just love one another.
Right.
But at the time, I didn't know him, and he was like, man, what's the holdup? I was like, I think my wife's going to be having a little surgery that weekend. This is like 4 months away. You know, I mean, I was just like stabbing in the dark. And he said, seriously? Seriously. Like, he got real with me, you know. And I said, well, Mr. Pahakis, it's one thing for me to stay right here in Aden and you think that I'm stupid. And it's a whole other thing for me to drive to Charleston, South Carolina and prove you right. And he busted out laughing. Like, when he finally got his composure back together, he was like, man, just bring your ass down here. And I'm pretty confident that you can pull this off. And I was nervous as a whore in church. Lord Jesus. I go down there to do the event, and we're cooking right out on King Street. And Rodney came. I didn't know Rodney. He was going to help me cook this hog because I'm cooking a hog on something I'd never cooked it on before. And so me and Rodney met at about 4 in the morning and scavenged the trash cans on King Street to get enough cardboard to start the fire with because we didn't have what we needed.
Right. That sounds like a barbecue story.
But we cooked this pig, and the way the event was going to go off, and this is really how dumb I am, but I didn't know anybody in the food business to know that this is a popular chef and this is an up-and-coming chef. Like, I just wanted that loop.
Right.
And so on the menu lineup that night was Stephen Trajewski, Donald Link, Sean Brock, Drew Robinson. I'm missing one that I can't think of. But anyway, and then me as the headliner. You know, what sense that made? And so their plan was all these guys were doing the apps and the sides that were going to go with our whole hog, cornbread, and coleslaw. Cooked the pig, they were going to show the film after apps, and then we were going to bring the pig in on a tray. And I remember they threw the doors open in that restaurant. I stood in there and watched that film, and when it got to the part talking about my grandfather, like I got a little emotional because I'm standing in a place that these people paid $150 a ticket or whatever it was for us. And so I got back out, we loaded that pig up, and when we walked in the restaurant, these people stood at their feet and applauded. And I was going, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, we do this every day in Ada, North Carolina to no applause. Absolutely no applause. If anything, somebody's belly aching about what it cost. And that led to this whole Fatback Collective thing that exists. And
Which, by the way, when I first saw that thing pop up, I was like, man, that's the best name ever. I was so pissed that I didn't think of that. I was so mad.
That all happened in the same weekend. The Fatback Collective was born on Sunday night after the Saturday night I did that event.
Isn't that awesome?
And it was so weird, and I'm so fortunate that I was present to be included in it because I've learned so much from those guys, and I love them like brothers.
So there's two things at the start of the show, right? It's the pig, it's the wood.
True.
I'm become so fascinated with the wood from the chef's point of view, not just with the fuel itself. You work with oak mostly, right? And that's because it's what you find in the area?
Yeah, I think any old school barbecue joint or anybody that's doing any type of wood fire food that's been around a long time has always used what's native to the area. Barbecue, I don't think is a complex food, but because it's trendy, people have to make a big story. If it's done correctly, it boils down to meat, fire, man. That's it.
Yep.
But if you got to drag out a story about it, then you got to make it elaborate. And so all these things are talked about as far as varieties of wood and all these variables, and they do exist, don't get me wrong, but I don't know that it matters to the extent sometimes that the drum gets pounded for. I dare say that in 1947, my granddaddy was studying whether he should ship in post oak from Texas to cook his pork on. No. They were simply cutting a tree down on the farm, dragging it up here and splitting it.
Yep.
Literally. Food in general, but especially barbecue, has very, very small roots.
Yeah.
They don't spread very far as styles go.
Right.
In some states, it can change by driving 30 miles. North Carolina's that way.
Yeah,
South
exactly.
Carolina's that way. And people are as equally passionate about their style as the next. And so it's not about saying that one style is superior to the other, in my opinion. But it is about doing things like, and when I say I feel like there's a contingency or constituency, I should say, that agrees with my beliefs of doing it correctly. Meaning, buy the best product you can buy, try not to screw it up, and cook it the purest way you can cook it.
Yep.
With as many man-made devices and elements as possible.
So now the chopping block back there, somebody had mentioned, oh, does some of the wood get into the barbecue? And your grandfather had said
that was my dad that said that.
I thought that was one of the best things I'd ever heard. What a way to just kind of quiet somebody right on up.
My dad's a man of, he has a plethora of one-liners.
That was right up there with the greats of like Buddy Hackett. When I heard that, I'm like, man, that is just spot on. Now, how often do you guys have to replace?
We'll get 10 to 12 months out of one, typically. Is normally the way it works.
Figuring when I heard you're doing about 40 hogs a week, give or take, I'm like, okay, I'm probably getting about.
That's
12
why
months.
it's so freaking loud right now. Is because it's been hollowed out on the bottom side.
It's just recently flipped over.
It's just well, we're getting to the we're in
end
the
of it?
short rows on it, and so it's like pounding a drum right now.
And now you guys do now coleslaw. How important is that to you? I'm a coleslaw slut. Like
When you only have what we have, you can't afford for it to suck. Because it's not a buffet where, you know, a common thing in a restaurant, if me and you go somewhere and you carry me to, you said you were from Charlotte. So if we go to Charlotte and you go, man, let's go to Slappy's or whatever it may be, the first thing you're going to do when we sit down, and I go, man, I think I'm going to try their chicken salad sandwich. And if you think it sucks, you're going to tell me that you think it sucks.
right.
I probably wouldn't do that. Maybe you ought to try this. And you're going to guide me to your favorite. Well, here, there's not a guide.
Right.
It's freaking like 3 or 4 things. And so we can't afford for it to be subpar. Now, I understand that it's not going to be for everybody. Somebody's going to have a preference on, they don't like sweet slaw. Maybe they like a vinegar-based slaw. And if you don't like a sweet slaw, this is not the place.
I love sweet slaw. To me, it's like the perfect foil for it. Obviously, it's got its acid.
There's enough sugar in it to bring back a diabetic that just went into a low sugar coma. I say that because I've done that before.
That's funny. So you do a chop slaw
Yeah,
and just vinegar, sugar.
no vinegar.
No
It's just
vinegar?
sweet, man.
Oh, wow.
It's sweet, yeah.
I know what to expect from barbecue, but it's always the coleslaw to me is sort of the.
Well,
that tells me a little bit about. I mean, if you're doing, no matter where you go, if you're going to go to the Piedmont, you know you're going to get butt. If you're coming out this way, you know you're going to get whole hog. Your expectations, or at least you have a general idea where you're going.
I think that the sweet slaw, and I've only learned this from being around people who are smarter with food than I am, but I think that sweet slaw complements the acidity that's in that pork.
What's the future for Samuel Jones? Skylight.
I hope it's long.
Yeah.
I hope it's long.
Do you have another generation in the wings?
I've got a 4-year-old little girl, but I'm going to treat her just like my family treated me. It's not going to be mandatory that you're in the barbecue business. Now, she's going to know what it means to work and what it takes to have something.
Right.
But my grandfather, I heard him say this so many times, and they would say, Pete, you going to leave this place to your youngins or your grand-youngins? And he would always say, I just want them to have something to fall back on.
That sounds like good advice from any father.
It's easy preaching and hard living, though.
Yeah,
That's what it is.
that's
Because
the
you
truth.
feel like you're doing what you're supposed to do right now I'm doing what I have to do right now in hopes that at some point in time I can do what I want to do.
Right. Although, I mean, if you look at the longer scheme of things, right? I mean, now you're not just cooking pigs here in Aden. You get a chance to go and do it in Texas, do it in New York, do it down here.
And that's my favorite part of traveling. There's no part of me ever wanted to be a cool guy in food. And it's kind of weird sometimes when people act like you're this larger than life person.
Right.
I'm thinking, man, I pulled my blue jeans on this morning just like everybody else did. And we just cooked pigs, just like I just hit at the right time.
Right.
I'm not doing anything any different than my family's done since 1947.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what makes you the cool guy, though, in food, because a lot of us are pretending one way or the other.
But I hadn't revolutionized the barbecue world or anything. I'm just a guy. But the people, the opportunities that's been afforded to me, that has allowed me to make friends, is probably my favorite thing.
But I think that's really the wealth of the whole thing.
I said that not long ago, and because the older I get, I'm like my father. I'm a little emotional. That event of losing my girlfriend years ago changed my perspective on a lot of things. And when I turned 36 last year, I had just oodles and oodles of people that wished me happy birthday and sent me nice notes and all these things. And I got a little sentimental about it. And I got on my Facebook the next day, because I don't use my Facebook for a sounding board to tell people my opinion and all that dumb stuff. But I got on there and I remembered something a man told me one time, and he said, money is the cheapest thing by which to measure wealth.
That's about right.
That's deep as a wishing well, that statement. And I went on to say that, you know, your wealth is measured in the love and the friendship and the family that you have on this side of the grass.
Yeah.
And if you're not fully aware of that, then you're cutting yourself short. And so when you said the word wealth, it made me think of that. Yeah, if you have a network of friends that are your true friends, and you know, so many times friendship is superficial to some people.
Sure.
It's based on what you can get out of me and what I think I can get out of you.
Yeah.
And that's not being friends.
Right.
Being friends is being friends. You know, if I'm your friend, you can go rob the liquor store tomorrow, and I'm not going to agree with the fact that you robbed the liquor store, but I'm still your friend.
Right. No, that's the
Your
truth.
actions are not going to change the way I feel about you.
Yeah, I can't think of too much that would.
Yeah.
To do something really stupid.
That's right.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to end this conversation.
Fair enough.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate
enjoyed
your
it,
time.
my friend.
Myself
Yes,
as
sir.
well. Thank you. We gotta look at the camera.
I'm a man of analogies. I love analogies. I was nervous as a whore in church. My old fat-headed redneck self standing over there in the corner. Don't be dumb. Work smarter, not harder. Don't put corners on the wheel.
Yeah.
But he's young. And so he doesn't have the right set of glasses on just yet. A man with a bladder infection would have had more pressure than that water hose had on it.